Okay, so the name of today's game is we are killing as much time as possible so we don't have to go back home. Today is my dad's birthday. And initially I was trying to care enough to say, well, it just, I don't know. Anyway, we just won't continue on that one because it's annoying and I don't want to have to deal with it any more than I wanted to deal with Father's Day or Mother's Day or my mom's birthday, right? Or Christmas or any other holidays that, is a big relevant thing to spend time with family. Don't give a shit. Don't want to do it anymore. And yeah, so here we are. So my brother and Gracie will be getting back tonight. I'm picking them up at the airport around midnight. And so, yeah, that's the excitement for the day. Just got done walking their dogs, and before that, I walked mine per our normal routine. As I was getting ready to leave, my parents were sitting at the table, and my dad was just kind of sitting there like he's waiting for me to say happy birthday, and I'm just, okay, normally what I've said in the past years, it's usually just happy day as I throw a gift card at him. Rather than, anything beyond that. Today, well, I have 95 cents in the bank account, or my bank account currently, so the gift card is not happening until I get paid anyway, and honestly, I don't know 100% that I will at that point. And I know that'll put them ignoring mine, which I would rather them ignore it than have to deal with more stuff that I don't really want, to be honest. Yeah. Now, if they want to just give me money, that would be a whole nother story, but they won't do that. Especially right now, because it's something that would be useful. And they are very much not wanting to do something that would be useful when, as far as they're concerned, I'm not pulling my weight around there anymore. I'm not fulfilling my obligation to cater to all their bullshit like I was raised to do. I started setting boundaries, stopped, just going along with all the bullshit, and have realized how much genuine bullshit there is in that house. Hey! Stop. Hound dog. Buttercup. 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 Butter. And I got this one. But yeah, anyway, as I was getting ready to leave, my dad's just sitting there at the table with his hands crossed like he's waiting for me to fulfill my obligation. And honestly, that's enough to make me not want to do anything for it, honestly. And I was ignoring it. And then as I was getting ready to walk out the door, my mom says, "What are you doing later?" It's like, I said, "I'm going over to Wayne's house and walking the dogs, and beyond that, I have no plans." And she's like, "Well, we can go for a ride when you get back." And I said, "For a puppy, because we're back there." She's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Up by Chicago." It's like, I said, "No, I don't want a puppy." And I walked out the door, and then I turned back and I said, "You two have at it." Of course, neither of them are supposed to be driving. So, and never mind the fact that they've fallen for at least 6 scams in the time that I've been back in that house. And that, refresher, 2019 was when I moved back in because I was going through my divorce, right? And since then, it's been working on healing the stuff that got me into the toxic relationship, which I have discovered is the toxic family. And yeah. So it's a whole lot we're working on with that still. Um, Mainly the biggest thing is how do I manifest my way out. um, but yeah, like I didn't even give them a chance to respond after I said that. I said, you two have fun. I'm not interested in a puppy. And turn around and left. And so now I'm just killing time because I don't want to go back and have to deal with them. You know, and I might work on bleaching my hair situation later. I will say, my mom's normally the one that helps me with my hair, and the last time she did, I said that I kind of felt like it was going to be the last time. And then she broke her wrist, and she's currently been asking me about it because, of course, it looks like it needs done. And you know, she asked about doing it last night, and it's like, I can't do it on the 4th of July when I have my own dogs terrified of fireworks, but these two were going to be home alone with fireworks. It's like, I can't do that to them. At least at least my parents were home for Gidget and her. I doped her before I left, so there was that. But then come to find out, my grandma apparently kept hitting her. She has like one of those, it's like an off-brand Life Alert thing. And so if she wears it all the time, and if there's a problem, she can just hit the button because she's usually not reliable about having her phone on her. So apparently she kept hitting it last night, and my mom finally went over there and spent the night with her. But she and my aunt had to keep going over there, and they couldn't convince my grandmother that it was just fireworks or get her to watch them at all. She was just absolutely convinced somebody was going around banging on her windows. So, I mean, we could count that as a point of why grandma needs to be in a nursing home, but we're not going to do that, so whatever. I don't know. I'm over family, y'all. So fucking over it. Oh, my dad did get another stupid flag for his birthday. As I was leaving the house to come over here, he's got one up that says family, faith, and freedom, because there again, if you say those right words enough, you can get them to go along with and believe anything. All you have to do is say the right word, and them's it. And he buys every bit of it. So, yeah. And it's kind of low, and I feel like it's probably intentionally low. I mean, granted, okay, there is a freaking power line right in that, like, above that spot. Like a little, I mean, it's not in the power line, but the flag could be because it's close enough to it. But just like where it's placed with the trees and everything, it's like he went extra low to make sure everybody can see it, to see it. He buys the bullshit words. They got his keywords. He buys every bit of their bullshit, and yeah. I honestly kind of wonder what our neighbors think, the ones right next door to us, because it's an interracial couple, and the husband is Hispanic, and my dad had that stupid Trump flag up for a long time. It's like, I don't know. I know my mom was out there having a hissy fit one day. She got mad at something, so she went out and was taking it out on the trees, and she's just like cutting a whole bunch of branches off, and that's when somebody's supposed to give a shit enough to go out there and participate with her, right? And we didn't do it. And so the neighbor came over with his kids, and they helped carry off her limbs that she was taking down, or branches or whatever. And the other day, my mom's friend was with her because, okay, my mom and the friend had gone to the friend's deceased sister's auction to get the crap that we didn't need in the garage, but now we have in the garage because we needed more shit to take up space, right? Anyway, my mom went in the house to go to the bathroom for a minute, and her friend said she was trying to deter my mom from the puppy path, and remind her that she doesn't really need one. As my father can't even take care of himself. Why the fuck does she want to have a puppy to take care of as well? And the thing is, she doesn't want to do it for herself. She wants me to be obligated to it because puppies, well, I like dogs better than people. So she thinks if she gets a puppy, I'll be more obligated to have to help out with it. Now, we've already had this conversation for the family situation anyway, because when it came up, there was a conversation a while back. My mom was trying to get me to come in there and sit down at the table and have a conversation with her and my dad. And I said, I don't want to. And I ended up just leaning on the back of a chair to give them the opportunity to speak. And of course, it was about a puppy. And I said, no. As I've said many times, I don't want to take care of a puppy. That day, the first emphasis was, how did I think Taz would do with a puppy? And did I think he would do better with a little puppy or with a puppy that's about a year old? And I said, I said, no, neither, because I don't want to have to take care of a puppy. And my dad threw out the statement of, I live there, I should have to help take care of a puppy. It's like, that's why I don't want to live there anymore. Well, I mean, that, and I'm 42 this week. So let me find another fucking reason other than I'm fucking over my family's bullshit, right? So whole channel's been dedicated to healing from the family bullshit and realizing how insanely fucked up it is and has always been, because I didn't realize that a lot of the things that were happening weren't normal, because, they're, okay. First, being the scapegoat, yes, I knew that wasn't normal. I knew very much that my family didn't like me, and that everything I did was wrong as far as they were concerned, but the way I am, I took that as it was a problem with me. And now I'm realizing that's not the case. And what the? India wiped her beard on my sleeve. Now she's just looking at me. She's like, yeah, so? Let me come see you, I'll do it again. But anyway, yeah. So that's basically the brunt of my channel has been navigating through this toxic family situation and all the bullshit with them, right? And the things that I have come to realize with setting boundaries has been how genuinely fucked up it is. If my mom doesn't get her way and, me and my brother don't go along with her bullshit, she has given us the silent treatment. It's like, that's not a new thing. We're just now able to be aware of what's happening and the fact that it is fucked up. Because, we both internalize that there's something wrong with us, when in fact, there's something wrong with our family, right? So, and our narcissistic mother, and our narcissistic grandfather, and everybody else who just goes along with the enabling bullshit, right? I'm over them all. That page I talk about on here periodically, the Brian Berecker page on Instagram, he was commenting about, or had something with the 4th of July, and The feelings of that, and I commented about how my dad got a new flag for his birthday, and it says family, faith, and freedom, because if you say those right words enough, they'll buy any of your bullshit. And he goes right along with it. So here we are. Yeah, no, we're yeah. Anyway, just the funny thing is, if I were to address the things that, because of the family situation, directly affect me, they're still going to come back around to, okay, point. I've talked a lot on here about how I tried doing everything their way and it got me nowhere. It got me a shit ton of debt. Okay, that was before seminary even. Seminary I took on willingly, even though I knew I had no intention of becoming a pastor. I knew that I needed to go through seminary more so for writing purposes. So yeah. Anyway, I figure eventually that one will balance itself out, because that was more for the purpose of, I always felt like I was supposed to do that, and I feel like the biggest thing is that I feel like if I am doing things to try to better myself so that I can have an impact for the good, then that's not going to go unnoticed by the universe, right? God, source, whatever the fuck you want to call it. For the sake, I always just say the universe, because to me, if I say God, it always puts me in the mindset of the God in a box type understanding that I always hated about, Christianity when I was going to church. It's like they want you to have all these things or these ideas about God, but then in reality they're worshiping some sort of version that's like God in a box and not truly, God is all that is, not picking and choosing based on what the people picked and chose, right? So I just go with universe because it automatically shifts me into a higher way of thinking than the word God does, and I don't have the connection to that as much, although I will never claim it, yeah, the idea of the Christian God, like, because it's a very limited view of God, and I disagree with that. I think God is way more than they want you to believe he is. But if you believe that God is way more than what they want you to believe, then they get pissy because you get out of line. Something like that. And it annoys me when I revert back to he when talking about God, because that there is an aspect of God that is both masculine and feminine. And yet I grew up in the church where it was always just the masculine perspective of it. But I don't feel it's definitely not all that there is, right? And I wrote the thing last summer. I woke up one morning and it's like I just had all these thoughts going through my head, so I just stopped and was like writing them. And the big thing that came up was the fact that the church Holy Ghosted the feminine, to remove the feminine so they could make it acceptable for men to treat women like shit, and for women to believe that they are lesser than, So they go along with the bullshit that the patriarchal structures in power want them to believe, because then the patriarchy gets its way, right? And I loathe patriarchal systems, period, because it wants to keep people locked in the distortion. Now, I've talked on here a lot about okay. Example. Back in the fall, I had taken my mom, my grandma, and my aunt to the rehab place in Greenwood to visit my grandfather. On the way back, my aunt wanted to stop for a late lunch, so we stopped at this little restaurant, and it was fine. Big thing was, it wasn't really the big thing. Something that happened, and it served a purpose, a very specific purpose, but it was no big deal, but the waitress winked at me and was like, it was just kind of a weird experience for me. And for me, what it was the universe showing me that people are noticing my energy has changed, but something like that had to come from somewhere safe. And generally, white men have not been safe. Right? So it couldn't be that. And since there's been, just, I really need you to stop doing that. I'm going to shut this door. Not that there's much in it, but yeah, I really like having the closet opened and in the view. Like a couple drums on a shelf, so it's no big deal and nothing major. But anyway. It was distracting me. But like, since it couldn't come from a man at that point for me to have this realization that people are noticing that my energy is shifting, because, there's been so much healing from toxic masculinity types in my life. I've talked a lot on here about my dad. I've talked a lot about my grandfather, my uncles, not all of my uncles, but a couple of them. So as I've been healing from men and issues deeply wrapped up in, patriarchal systems that made me believe shitty things so they could, hijack my life, basically. It couldn't come from a man, right? So, and of course, my viewpoint at the time was I always thought that I was straight, but I've realized since then there was that and another situation where I got talked into going to check out the Army-Navy game at the American Legion with a chaplain that I used to work with. And I talked to some girl that had played roller derby. And, we kind of bonded very briefly. And it was a very short conversation. And the only reason we had the conversation was she was on her way to the bathroom after I was introduced to her, and I had to go to the bathroom since I just got there and had no idea where it was at. And I was like, "Hey, I'm going to follow you because I don't know where it is, and I need to go." So then we're just talking, and it turned out she played roller derby, and so we kind of bonded over that. But then she's like, apparently she was also part of his. He had a Lutheran singles group that he was involved with. And he had invited some people from that as well. And I think she had connected with them as well, very briefly. I don't know what the story was. Anyway, we're having this conversation about roller derby and stuff, and she randomly says something about, I'm not even sure how she worded it. I think she asked if I was into women or something. And at the time I was just like, no, it just kind of, it caught me off guard more than anything. But in the time that, after that, I realized it's like, I don't think it's that I'm straight. I think it's just that I've always known that the specific person that I am looking for is male, right? It's like that's the whole basis for the idea of me having thought that I was straight at all. But it was really just the point that I know that he is in the masculine packaging in this lifetime. And so I was always tuned into that point and trying to use that as a reference point, right? So then these other situations come up, kind of caught me off guard, but then made me have to process through that and realize that it wasn't that I was straight necessarily. It was just that I knew there's one person that I've been looking for. And of course, since I committed my love and career lives over to the universe, and I always lump those together because they went hand in hand. And I think that's a big part of, like what I am supposed to be writing about when I get to writing will be, a lot of the twin flame stuff as it's been relevant for this whole journey. I talk about it a lot, and I know a lot of people probably think it's just a load of shit, but it's literally the thing that has forced me to keep moving with this healing stuff when, like with the family shit, I would have wanted to stop. Like there's all these times when I've had to really stop and look at where bad ideas and beliefs have come from. And it was largely because of, religious conditioning as well as how that played out with my family and my toxic family situation, right? So it's just and all my cancer placements mean that like home and family is supposed to be one of the most important things for me. And yet I'm having to face the fact that the family that I've been in is extremely toxic, right? So I've cried my way through a bunch of these videos because of that. And there's part of me that is kind of on the verge of it at this point in time, but I'm trying to refrain. But why should I refrain now any more than I have in the past when that's kind of been a necessary part of the process, right? But anyway, so the universe comes up with these things just to show me this point that it's not that I'm straight. It's just that the person I'm looking for, and obviously I've talked on here many times, I already know who he is, because after committing the love and career over to the universe, then it was brought to my attention. And then there have been all these things that have showed me how his name, birth date, initials, all these things have been following me around my entire life, right? So when I turned love and career over to the universe to lead, the space that I was in when I did that was wanting to be ready, to be ready, to be ready. As Abraham Hicks said, if you are ready to be ready, to be ready, then the universe will line you up with the lessons you need to get ready for what it is you want, right? So if love is one of those things, and it was, and it was, watching the movie with my mom, I watched that Love Again movie, and at the end credits, I'm listening to the song and she's talking about, you don't have to move a mountain, just keep moving. And it's like that, the immediate thought I had was my writing process, because at that point I was working on getting a routine where I was writing every day. And that line just hit me hit me really strongly in that moment. It's like the forward motion is what frees up the space to be able to move the mountains eventually. Of course, it's not going to look like that immediately, but you got to start somewhere, right? And if you, okay, I have an extensive history of when things get too hard, I just quit. Why? Because it was less scary, or less work or whatever. Yeah, the biggest thing was, okay, like with my family, what I've realized is I always went into self-sabotage mode because I wasn't supposed to do anything worthwhile as far as they were concerned. My sole purpose, as far as my family is concerned, is I was supposed to continue feeding into the toxic system where they can suck the life out of me and I just exist for that purpose, right? So, my parents and my grandparents did their part in the toxic family line where they, they're when their parents were a certain age, they started taking care of them because that's what the obligation is. But it's not, it's like you don't exist for any other purpose other than to feed into the family delusion. And I'm not one for delusions. So, yeah. Okay, now how did I get there? Going back to the point where I've talked a lot about, especially white men haven't been safe, and this is like not, okay. Okay, I've talked about how when I was in elementary school, we were watching something that had to do with the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but stuff from that kind of time frame. I remember thinking that I couldn't date a black guy because I wouldn't want him to have issues with my family. I remember that being the general basis of the thought. And so it was always something that was just kind of not even a consideration. Of course, I went to an all-white school. There were like a handful of Hispanic kids. The only black kids that were there at that time there had been 3 that were adopted by a white couple down the street from us. But I think they were quite a bit younger than me, so I don't think I was in the same building as they were, much, if at all. So it was just like so not prevalent there. I remember, okay, when I was in French class in high school, we went on a field trip. There was a French play that was being shown at one of the IPS schools. And of course, those are, they have a much higher black population than town founded by the KKK, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, the dragon's the mascot, so there's like a bunch of, I don't know. Anyway, people can say what they want about it not being that way, but you know what? I still remember a couple kids that, back then were tooling around with their big Confederate flags on their trucks, or one kid driving his fucking tractor to school. What the hell is that all about? That kind of dumb shit. Anyway, when we were going to on this field trip, it was like the French teacher made a point to tell us, to behave. There's like, okay, I got the point what it was, but especially because the one dude with the Confederate flag, that was also the same dude that thought because my stupid ass cousin was spreading rumors about me and thought that gave him some sort of access to me and all that bullshit, and then later put me on his fucking hit list for people he would kill in the school when he brought like a knife to school or whatever, and got expelled for that. Right. Anyway, he was in that class, so it made perfect sense why we would get this lecture before we go to this field trip, right? And we went over to the school, and I remember making eye contact with this black kid, and he said something about fucking crackers or whatever, and it made me laugh because I've never actually encountered that scenario in my lifetime until that point. And then my first thought was, I know a whole lot of flaky white people and I'm related to a bunch of them, so that makes perfect sense. So okay. But anyway, the point that I basically decided back then that I couldn't date a black guy because I didn't want him having issues with my family for any reason. And what it ended up doing, other than that, it was basically having that out there as well was also part of knowing that the person that I'm eventually going to be with isn't black, but the bigger thing was throughout my life when men haven't been safe, the black men that I've worked with have always been some of my favorite people. And it's like, because there was never, will you stop? Lay down. Because it was never even on the radar that, to consider dating outside of my race, in that way. It was just like, it actually made it so there was a group of people that were safe for me to be around. Because the main people I've had issues with in my lifetime have been the white dudes, right? Now, that said, especially, this is actually making more make sense on why that's been the case, with everything that's going on in the world right now. So, yeah, but like, obviously, since I went to a all-white school for the most part, at that time, I think it was like a good 10 years after I graduated that there was actually a black family that moved to this town. And now there's a lot of Indian families that are in this area, especially this neighborhood, actually. So it's kind of nice to see diversity, especially after all that time. However, there are some of the same issues obviously still going on. My niece has a friend that she's recently started spending a lot of time with and talking to, now that she's getting ready to move, who is, I think she's biracial. And she has kids giving her a hard time because it's fucking town, right? So, yeah. But anyway, that said, also some of my favorite people in my lifetime have been, my white friends as well. My brother is like has been one of the most important people in my lifetime, one of my number one allies, for our toxic family situation, and then like the group of friends that I had in high school, they were mainly white guys. So while there were a whole bunch that were like extremely toxic and icky, there were a whole bunch that were not that way, but it's like the world, especially with the current government in power, it's like you see a lot of the bad, right? And so, as it's really easy to make the generalizations, but there's also a reason that it's also kind of necessary in this situation, as far as that the and it's not exclusively white men. There's a whole lot of issues with white women. And, that's my biggest problem with my grandmother. She's the first line of complacency for my toxic grandfather and all of his bullshit, right? So seeing everything from that lens, with the toxic family system, but how it's the same shit playing out on a larger scale, is making a whole lot of things make a lot more sense. But, okay, like my brother, I've talked about, he had to go to that therapy group for a while, and he said one of the first people that came over and introduced herself to him was a black lady, and she said specifically that she had a lot of issues with white men, and she knew that not all white men were bad, and she appreciated him being there, because he's a prime example of somebody that's not trying to put everybody through shit, and often gets dumped on as well, because of our toxic ass family. I wasn't sure if I heard something in the other room. There's a camera in there, and yesterday she was talking to us, and it was kind of weird. But my sister-in-law, but anyway, which is why I don't go do videos in there. But yeah, so it's like he's taken a lot of shit from our family, but then because he's not trying to make things worse for people in the community, but he has gotten dumped on more than his share, because he is not just trying to be a dick and go along with, the bullshit patriarchal structures and whatnot. Now, as he is a dude, there are some things that I can talk about that he doesn't necessarily get, like the misogynistic angle of our father. Like, he doesn't understand how much that is a thing, because that hasn't been his experience, right? Because it's not, he's the son. That hasn't been relevant, whereas I'm the daughter. So, yeah. The idea is property, right? And yeah. I don't know. Next couple of weeks are going to be interesting. Actually, I guess it's 9 days that they're looking at being out of here. And then I'll be stuck with these people by myself. I'm definitely not looking forward to that. Definitely not looking forward to the conversations that I'm going to have to listen to while they're, working and getting ready to leave. Because, part of the puppy thing, part of it is my mom's wanting to bring something to give more life back to my father. I think I think if she had to be honest about it, she would also be kind of surprised that he's still around. And I keep pointing out, last year on his birthday, he was pissed because he was still alive. And he told us all he was pissed because he thought he'd be dead by now. So it's like, he doesn't want to be here, so what's the point? And then, do you really need to have something else to take care of when you can't even take care of yourself? And if something were to happen to him, right? Because that was the thing that came up at the last conversation that we had on this end, was if they got the puppy, right? Okay. Mom said, we wouldn't ask you to take care of it. It would be our puppy. It's like, yeah. And my dad says, well, you're here. You should have to take care of it. And it's like, that right there. First off, no, I don't want it. And also, my mom follows it up with, it would be on them unless something happens and my dad goes back in the hospital and she has to stay at the hospital with him, then I would have to step up and take care of the puppy. Well, that almost sounds like we're planning some kind of health issue, doesn't it? So yeah, fuck it. I don't want a puppy. And it's not that I have a problem with puppies. I love puppies. I don't want a puppy in that situation. I have 3 dogs. Okay, Ziva is 12, and this whole, me coming over here all the time to hang out with these 2 has been irritating her immensely. And the other day when we stopped and picked up my aunt and the corgi puppy, like, she just stayed in the back seat and, like, she kind of shut down for a little while until we actually got over to the school and, went on her walk. Then she kind of perked up, but she was definitely not happy. And she's 12. I would like her to enjoy the last days that, however long I get with her, I would like her to enjoy those. And not have the stress of a puppy making her look that much older, for one thing. And, because it's always been the case. It's like, if you get a really young puppy when you have an old dog, it makes the old dog look even older, right? That's just energy comparison, and then it kind of, it makes them tired too. We had the corgi stay with us for 10 days. And Ziva was really quiet in that time. It did take her a little while to perk back up, but now every time that corgi puppy is around, if my aunt and uncle bring her over for any reason, or if we go pick them up and go on a walk with them, she's not happy. And she kind of shuts down. And I don't like that. So I'm more concerned about her than bringing a puppy in for my parents that have no business having a puppy. Okay, for fuck's sake. My dad had his dogs. His dog was the one that died back in January, New Year's Day. Her feet were horrible because he stepped on them so many times, and she would never learn, so she would always be like right up his ass, and he was clumsy as hell, so every single time he was right on her feet, and she'd yelp but not learn anything, and her feet did not look, it wasn't good. Right? So that, like, they were like her way back from what they're supposed to be, and just it didn't look like a dog with healthy feet. So what are they going to do with the puppy? And there was the problem when he picked up his dog and then plopped down, because he can't sit down like a normal human. He has to plop. There was an issue where she yelped, and we don't know what exactly happened, but when I went over to check on her, it looked like she couldn't move her back end, but then as I helped her with it, and, I put her on the floor to see how she did, make sure she could still walk, and there wasn't any kind of issue on that end. And she seemed to be walking okay. But, then there was just like a whole bunch of stuff that it went downhill fast. I've talked about that in other videos too. But it's like, what makes them think they have any business with a goddamn puppy? Because they don't. And really, the only thing I already know what they really want it for is to make me feel obligated to it and to make Gracie feel bad that she's getting ready to move because they just got a puppy, and make it where she doesn't want to move because there's a puppy now. Yeah, because we've already had some of those conversations. Like Gracie was excited about the puppy at one point, and then it was the more time she spends with my mother, then the more she kind of acts up and doesn't really want to move and all this stuff, because that's what they want. They want her to feel bad about moving, because that's how they've always gotten their way. If you feel bad about something, then they can manipulate you, right? So that's the purpose. This whole toxic family system. The purpose is make you feel like shit so you feel like you have to do their bidding. I don't want to. So yeah, you're trying to find that happy place with surrendering to what is in order to get the fuck up out of there. Yeah. I don't know. I really don't have a whole lot else to talk about that I can think of, but I also really don't want to go home because I don't want to have this stupid conversation again. Although, in truth, that's probably part of she would be pissed if I threw out that he can't even sit on the couch normally, and that there was a glitch with Holly because he couldn't sit on the couch normally. And what does she think would happen any different with a puppy? Because there was a big deal when Holly died that we can't let him think that he had something to do with this. It's like, why? So he can want to get another puppy? Because she was looking at puppies that day. They dropped Holly off to be cremated, and when they got back home, she was looking at puppies. So it's literally just a thing to bring new energy in, to make other people feel obligated and try to rope us back into falling in line. And it's like, that's the exact same shit that my ex was doing with the, collecting animals, because he thought that if I was bound to taking care of the animals, it would make it that much harder for me to leave. But it got to a point where it's like, I don't want to be a fucking zookeeper. And I felt like that was my sole purpose there. And I didn't want that. So fuck it. And I took my dogs, I took the birds. I really wish I took the cat, but as I've said many times, I have to look at it as I left the cat there for the kid, because, I was there with the kid anytime he was having to deal with his, anytime he was there with his father, from the time he was 3 right before he turned 4, like a month and a half before he turned 4, until 2019. And I think he was 10 when I left, getting ready to have his 11th birthday, like a month and a half after I left. Maybe 2 months. I'm not going to mess. I'm going to say I left on March 14th. And the kid's birthday was May 21st. So, yeah. What? think I am going to try to mess with my hair by myself, though. Wish me luck. Because I don't know how that's going to go. Last time I did it, I just got the box kind and just went over the top. Since I've had green, and you can't have green over pink or pink over green because it cancels it out and it'll make brown. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll just do it all purple and hope for the best. I don't know. But I don't really have anything else that I can think of to talk about at this point in time. So I guess I'll get off of here and go. Stop delaying the inevitable, if you will. 5555. And see what happens. And possibly skate. Who knows? But I can bet that after dealing with them, that'll come up. And of course, I'm going to hear about how, they just don't think that I give a shit about my father, which to be honest, I kind of don't. He accepted his lot in life. And, I've said many, many times, I always got the sense that if the car blew up with me in it, it would take care of two problems for him. Then he wouldn't have to deal with the car, and then he wouldn't have to deal with the kid. And my brother has felt the sense of resentment from him, and he said, he actually knows more about the situation where apparently my dad had dated the lady that ended up in Germany, and I think they were both in the military or whatever, and he could have gone with her, but he was obligated to take care of his parents, so he did not. So he threw his chance at having any kind of life away because he accepted his role as, the oldest child had to take care of the parents kind of thing, because he's used that line on my brother. Cool. Okay. So I have these 3 pairs of red, white, and blue leggings. And they're the capri leggings, which that's like all I'm wearing right now. Although I should try shorts because the rest of my legs are incredibly pasty. I have a really cool sock line right now though. But my legs are hairy, so I'm not going to show it. But anyway, somebody's finally asking me about them, which was, I thought there would be more interest in them leading up to the 4th of July. But then I got a message this morning about them. So, hey, as long as she wants them, I don't care. Yesterday, since I hadn't heard anything, I got them out and seriously considered hanging on to them. And then, the more I was looking at them, it's like, I can't. I have no interest. Especially with all the stuff that I've been realizing with my military career, as jacked up and cut short as that was, still the systems in place and the toxic energies that are still very much there and at play. Okay, that's one of my issues with, the freedom, faith, and family, right? The big thing with freedom is but the system that you're wanting to keep locked into place is one that's keeping you in energetic servitude. So that's not really freedom. And they say family, but the family's, I know my family is miserable, extremely toxic, not happy. Why is that supposed to be something anyone should want? And faith, right? They say the word, but that's just, okay. I had a comment on, I think that Brian Recker's page the other day, something about, there's some, I said there's a verse about hope, faith, and love, and I can't remember. It's something, and the greatest of these is love, whatever. But it's the importance of the other two as well. But really, it's if you just accept the words for the religious system, and that's basically what it is, because it's not actually moving from a place of actually believing in the Christ message, because they're living exactly in opposition of the Christ message. But because they're throwing his name around, they're accepting it, right? But, as I've said many times, Jesus did not come out of the religion of the time to create a new religion. He came to show that it is possible to do the healing work, so you can do the healing work and actually do worthwhile things in life. But if you're keeping yourself bound to the obligation of the religious system because it says the words and because of all these things that it makes you believe, but you're too blind to the obvious contradictions. It's like, how many? Okay, a lot of the misery, like for people like my father. So, wanting to beat people over the head with the churchy bullshit, but not realizing that everything he's doing is exactly contrary to the Christ message. But he listens to the stuff that says Jesus all the time, so that means he's more faithful, right? No, it just means he didn't get it. And that was never okay for me, right? So, I talked to somebody at that Inner Path shop the other day. I mentioned the verse and she knew the one that I was talking about. So it was like, I remember when I was in high school, there was something about, there was a verse that had something to do with basically not being ready for the meat. So, you were only given the milk, right? And you never moved beyond the milk was the problem. I remember thinking when I was reading that verse, it's like, I don't want to be somebody that doesn't get it like that. And that, they have to stick with the very basic level because they don't get it. It's like, I want to get it. I don't want to get the purpose of this and actually be able to do some kind of something worthwhile in my lifetime, because I chose to move beyond, the milk of the situation to actually grow up in some kind of belief system and realize that the belief system that I came out of was shit because all it did was keep you locked into toxic systems, right? So I don't want to do that anymore. I never was okay with doing that, which is a big part of, the various intentions that I have set throughout my lifetime. And, of course, that sets you on a sort of downward spiral because you have to unravel all the shit that's not good to be able to get to the absolute core of who you are and rebuild, based on this situation, am I okay with what's going on in the world around me? No? Okay, then something should be done to fix that. And how can I be a useful means of helping to bring on the changes that are necessary to help the greater good? Now, especially if you're working for the greater good and trying to understand things, I have gotten a whole lot of messages about being patient and really trusting the process because there is a lot more at stake than just my little worldview, right? It's like, this is for the good of the whole. But you're not going to understand it at that level because there are a lot of other pieces that have to fall into place first. But eventually you'll get it, right? So, yeah. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up and go, I guess, face the inevitable, see what happens on this bullshit end of things that I don't want to further the I don't want a puppy point. If I need to step into the mean layers of sounding things, then I can do it. Like the fact that he can't sit normally And he couldn't sit normally with his dog. And look how that turned out. Because I think that was the big part of the problem. Whatever happened in that little sit, no, I don't think it was intentional, but that doesn't change the fact that it still happened. And if we're just trying to coddle him so he doesn't have to feel bad about what happened, and then bring another dog into the situation, no, I'm not seeing how that's a beneficial thing. But I digress. Anyway, so beyond today, I don't know how this video thing will be. I mean, I'll probably go back to doing them over at the school after I skate or whatever. Or just running away to the school to do a video. Of course, if I'm home, I'll be able to know if they're not home, and then I can do more in my room again or whatever. But anyway, we'll see. We'll play it by ear. I don't know what's going to happen this next week and a half, 2 weeks. Not really looking forward to it, but it is what it is. So surrender to the what is, and I'm sure I'll talk about it a few times. But for now, as always, I appreciate you. Until the next time, see ya.